I have been asked to talk about discipline, and when I think about the crisis in public schools, it brings to me going to my daughter's school recently, and there was a honor roll ceremony, and she got principal's honor roll, all A's, and watching the school choir sing a song, "Free at Last." And they, sang this beautiful song. And as I looked at the faces in the crowd of this predominantly, probably 99% black school, sitting and thinking about the little boys in particular in that choir. And the fact that they're singing about free at last, and actually the irony of it is that those little black boys and girls are not free. And that when you look at statistics, 1 in 8 black males in their 20s are engaged in the criminal justice system every day in this country. And that when we look at suspensions, the importance of this discipline issue is that this is where it begins for our children. And that discipline, expulsions, suspensions, referrals to alternative schools, and arrests in schools. This is where the pipeline begins, pushing our children off of an academic track, even as young as the age of 5, and into the juvenile justice system. When we look at what has happened to children across the country, actually, discipline is the best indicator of involvement in the juvenile justice system. Children who are disciplined are more likely to drop out, more likely to fail, more likely to be in the juvenile justice system, more likely to be in the criminal justice system as adults, and then more likely, of course, to be living in poverty. When we look at discipline and the issue of zero tolerance, and what is happening to our children is actually not really about safety. And that, in fact, that's what we thought it was about. That's what we were sold on. It is the knee-jerk reaction to the rare incidents of school shootings. But, in fact, when we peel back the skin of the onion, our children are being disciplined for things like disrespect of authority. In Detroit, for example, you can get up to 20 days out of school for talking out in class. Now, 20 days out of school in an era of high-stakes testing means a lot for our children. And you could imagine, as we start looking at the reauthorization of ESEA, that the more we put our stakes in testing as the measure of accountability and the measure of whether or not a teacher should get a raise or a reward, or it's used as an incentive, that there are perverse incentives for pushing more of our children out. And that, in fact, there are studies that do make the connection between high-stakes testing and discipline. We recently released a report that you can find on our website, advancementproject.org, that is called Test, Punish, and Pushout. And when we look at suspension rates, and the Children's Defense Fund has been documenting disparities in suspensions for African American children since the 1970s, at earliest I can glean, and that when you look at the increases, we actually have seen increases since No Child Left Behind was passed. In the use of suspensions. And when we look at the disparities, there are clear disparities. The rates have increased since 1973 for black students from 6 per 100 to most recently 15 per 100 for black students. And that's since 1973. And we've seen increases since NCLB in suspensions for black students of 8% and expulsions since NCLB up 33%. Black males are two times as many black males as white males receive out-of-school suspensions. When we look at policing, because clearly in many of our schools, if you are a black student, you're more likely to go to a school that has zero tolerance in it and that has police in it. Even though that school may not be the same school that actually nearby had the school shooting, right? Because Columbine actually does not have police. They do not have metal detectors. They feel safe at that school. But those kids are more likely to be policed if they are black or Latino and in predominantly minority or predominantly schools with kids of color, and therefore more likely to be engaged with police throughout the day. When we look at the budgets for school police departments, I mean, places across the country, Florida, Texas, et cetera, have school police departments where we're putting a lot of money into the policing of our schools. And that means those kids are more likely to be arrested in schools. In a place like Florida, there were, in 2008, 21,300 students arrested in schools. 69% of them, again, were misdemeanors. And often disorderly conduct. The things adults wouldn't even get arrested for in a bar, kids will be arrested for in school. In Pennsylvania, 13,000 arrests. So we look at this issue, and it is really important that we attack this issue, because this is the starting point for our children in this pipeline.